So we're going to fly through a little bit of what we went over yesterday. We're going to finish this lecture today. We are going to go over your your student work, and then if there's time, you'll take the chapter 18 quiz, or it might be homework. I don't know. We'll see what's happening. As I mentioned, I won't be here tomorrow. Theoretically, Mrs. Wilter is supposed to be my sub, but she isn't able to come today, so I don't know what's going on. I am going. I think I told you yesterday, to Kansas City to say goodbye to my sister, who's moving to Lausanne, Switzerland. So I will not be here tomorrow. Yes, sir. Oh, that's the whole reason why she's not leaving until Saturday. But I've got a game Friday night. I've got a game Saturday afternoon, and so want to be there for those. Yeah. So you be praying for me on the road. I'm driving my husband's car. I don't enjoy doing that. And he also doesn't have a key fob. He doesn't like key fobs. This is on YouTube. He's like, that's too new fashioned for him. And so last time I drove it was at night, and I think I'm in the parking lot at the Croc or somewhere, and I'm trying to find the black hole that's in the dark that the key goes in. So. Yeah, you can pray for me and pray for me having to say goodbye. We're very close, however. Okay, so we're talking about Jesus going to the Feast of Tabernacles. Remember, I told you the Feast of Tabernacles occurs in the fall. It's either September or October, depending on the year. And it's celebrating two different things. It's celebrating the harvest, specifically the grape and the olive harvest. And it's also celebrating God's protection of his people while they wandered in the desert. Now, why is it called the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths? If you hear Feast of Tabernacles, it's the same thing as the Feast of Booths. They're the same festival feast. And so the people would make these sort of huts, think a tent or a shanty or something like that, to live in during that time of the feast, because that's what the people who are harvesting do, so they can stay near the grapes and the olives, which are a little bit temperamental, high need kinds of fruit. I don't know. And then it's also, remember, they lived in tents as they were wandering in the desert, so it's also part of remembering that. When you connect a memory to something specific, it kind of burns it in your mind. And so this is a physical reminder. Building these booths, these tabernacles, same term, is something that sears what God has done into their minds, into their hearts. So we talked about Jesus not going up to Jerusalem just yet to go to the Feast of Booths. He does eventually go. And it may be because of this, that the Jews were seeking to kill him. He wasn't afraid of that. He just knew he needed to not show up with a bunch of fanfare. He needed to go quietly, so he didn't draw attention. He eventually will, by the way, draw attention to himself by teaching in the temple. So the only one of these that makes sense is that the Pharisees are going to be growing more antagonistic. The others are just conjecture. So his brothers say, "Hey, go up to Jerusalem. Go up to Jerusalem and make a showing for yourself. Go do some miracles. Get some notoriety. People like you are supposed to be famous. Come on, go be famous." And Jesus says he's not going to do that. He says, "I'm not going up to the festival." Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going at all. He means I'm not going yet. And so he says, "My time has not yet come." It's his time to go to the feast. It has not yet come. It will come a day or two or three later. It will come, but not when his brothers were telling him to. So he does go in secret to the feast, and then it talks about the feast a little bit. That's fine. We already talked about that. And the people marveled at his brilliance. where did this guy learn this stuff? He's never studied under a rabbi. Who have you studied under? And so when they were questioning who is his authority, who is it that taught him this, he says, my Father. I get what I say from God. And then what school did you go to? Where did you go to school? Heaven, with my Father. And if somebody said that today, we'd think it was pretty crazy, right? Well, they thought it was pretty crazy, even back then. And then he says about the people, to the people, has not Moses given you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law. Why do you seek to kill me? And remember, I told you yesterday, if you are a Jew, and this is true today as well as in ancient times, if you are a Jew, what is it you are supposed to do? What is the most core thing you are supposed to do? Keep the law. Keep the law. It's all about the law, the Torah, right? It's all about the law. So keep the law. If you are going to do God's will, you are going to keep the law in Judaism. And if they want to kill Jesus, an innocent man, are they keeping the law? No. Pretty sure the law says you don't kill innocent men, right? And so he's saying God's will for you is to keep his law, but you're not keeping the law because you're trying to kill me. So this is where we pick up for today. So Jesus is going to connect what he's saying, because the big bugaboo they had with Jesus was that he healed on the Sabbath, and you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. And so keep that in mind as we go through these verses, and I'm just going to give you the gist of it because it is kind of hard to follow. Even in the Greek, it's kind of hard to follow. But he's going to hearken back to the healing in John 5, where he healed the man by the pool of Bethesda on the Sabbath. So that's what he's going to be talking about as we read these verses. The crowd answered, "You have a demon. Who's seeking to kill you?" Well, the crowd didn't realize that the Jewish people did. So here's verses 21 through 24. Jesus answered them, "I did one work." Okay, so the healing, the healing of the pool of Bethesda. "And you all marvel at me. Moses gave you circumcision, not that it was from Moses, but from the fathers." I'll get to that in a minute. "And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If on the Sabbath a man receives circumcision so that the law of Moses may not be broken, are you angry with me because on the Sabbath I made a man's whole body well? Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment." So that's the whole thing. Okay, here's the gist of this. When he says that circumcision wasn't from Moses, it was from the fathers. Circumcision was first given to Abraham. Abraham was told to circumcise every male in his company, from his family to his servants to everyone was to be circumcised. So the law, not the law so much, the practice of circumcision was from the fathers, was to Abraham, the father of the Jews. But it was put into law. It was codified under Moses. It became part of the law when the law came into existence, which was under Moses. So he says, Moses gave you circumcision. He gave you the law, right, which included circumcision. But it was given to Abraham first. No, that's that late Delta. So circumcision was seen as, I know this is hard to explain, especially if you know what circumcision is, but it was seen as a perfecting rite, as a type of healing, if you will. I'm not sure why it was seen that way, but it was seen that way. So if the seventh day, so baby boys were circumcised on the seventh day after they were born, right? If that seventh day occurred on Saturday, on the Sabbath, they still did the circumcision. They didn't say, "Oh, no. I think it's called a beret or whatever, who is the person who circumcises. That's his job. And he's working. He's doing his job on the Sabbath." And they'll say, "No, we can't circumcise because it's Sabbath. You'll be working." And they went ahead and did that. Why? Because it was so important. Because it was a healing. Because it was a perfecting rite. So Jesus is saying if it's okay to heal someone partially on the Sabbath with a circumcision, why is it not okay to heal someone fully? Why am I doing something wrong by healing someone fully? Make more sense now? Yeah. So Jesus is not breaking the Sabbath. And that's what he's been saying all along. He is fulfilling both the Sabbath and circumcision. So, so it says here, the people deny that they would kill him. Christ exposes their ignorance in this passage we just talked about. And then the people become even more confused. Here's verses 25 through 27. Some of the people of Jerusalem therefore said, is not this the man whom they seek to kill? And here he is speaking openly, and they say nothing to him. Can it be that the authorities really know that this is the Christ? But we know where he comes from. So they're wondering, who is this guy? Where does he come from? And the Jews realized rightly that Jesus was claiming to be Messiah. Jesus was making a messianic claim. They were correct about that. But they were wrong about something else. They believed wrongly that Messiah would appear suddenly out of nowhere and bring immediate deliverance. And so when they say we know where he comes from, he was born in Nazareth, right? He grew up in Galilee. He grew up in, around here. So he can't be Messiah because A, he didn't appear suddenly, and B, the Romans, there's no deliverance going on. And so it was their wrong beliefs that caused them to misunderstand what was going on here. So they're saying this guy can't be Messiah. We know where he comes from, and he's not delivering anyone. And they assumed that that he would do that right away. So, but they did understand that Jesus claimed to be Messiah, and he did. Regardless of what my college professor said, that Jesus nowhere claimed to be Messiah. Jesus everywhere claimed to be Messiah. My professor might not have realized that with his PhD in religion and everything, but the people who heard Jesus did. We're going to see this again in chapter 10, over and over again. We're going to see that. So here's what it says in verses 28 and 29. So Jesus proclaimed as he taught in the temple, you know me and you know where I come from. I think this was a question. It doesn't, there's no, in the original Greek, there's no punctuation. So that can make things hard. So I think this might have been a question. You know me? You think you know me? And you know where I come from? He's saying, I come from way farther away than Nazareth or Bethlehem. I said he was born in Nazareth. He's born in Bethlehem. I come from way farther away from there. I come from heaven. But I have not come on my own accord. He who sent me is true, and him you do not know. I know him, for I come from him, and he sent me. So who's he talking about? He's talking about God. He's talking about his Father. So this is really important to understand what Jesus is saying here. As I said, it could be a question. Do you really know me? But why was it offensive to them? This was offensive to them. The Jews prided themselves in being God's people. They knew God. No one else knew God. Only the Jews knew God. And so Jesus is saying, I'm not here on my own, but it is truly God who sent me. And then he says to them, you don't know him. That would have been extraordinarily offensive. Do you know who we are? We are the Jewish leadership. How can you say we, of all people, don't know God? We're the ones that know him best. But Jesus says they don't. So that was a double insult to his Jewish audience. So Jesus says, you don't know God. And he says, God is revealing himself through me, someone that they hate. So in the mouth of anyone who is not the Messiah, that would have been preposterous. And it probably would have been blasphemy. And that's exactly what the Jews thought, that it was preposterous and it was blasphemy. So let me get caught up on this. Christ exposes their ignorance, and he claims to be this Messiah, but the Jews seek to kill him. I think so they were seeking to arrest him, but no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not yet come. So these people are confused. The Jewish leaders are angry, and they weren't able to kill him, but they wanted to. And so there's all kinds of misunderstanding in this passage. We've got the Jews not understanding what Jesus is saying, and we've got the people like, well, where is he from? And we know where he's from. He can't be Messiah. And so there's a whole lot of misunderstanding happening in these passages. The Jews kill him, but there are many who end up believing in him. Yet many of the people believed in him. They said, when the Christ appears, will he do more signs than this man has done? In other words, if this dude's not the Christ, would Christ do more than this? So there were some that wanted to kill him. There were some that walked away from him. But many people believed in him. And so he began to draw more and more crowds. So the result of all of this caused the Pharisees great concern. As the following verses reveal, the Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these things about him, and the chief priests and Pharisees sent officers to arrest him. Jesus then said, I will be with you a little longer, and then I am going to him who sent me. You will seek me, and you will not find me. Where I am, you cannot come. The Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? Does he intend to go to dispersion among the Greeks? I'll explain that in a minute. And teach the Greeks? What does he mean by saying you will seek me and you will not find me? And where I am, you cannot come. What is he talking about? Yeah, he's talking about heaven. He's talking about his death, his resurrection, his ascension. Yeah.
But I also think that he probably means like the Jesus that they're looking for and stuff like that. It's in heaven, right? But they're not searching for the right Jesus, or they want what they think is Jesus, and so they're not finding that, and so they will never find him because they're just not going to end up in heaven.
Yeah. So they have these preconceived notions, right, about who Messiah is and what Messiah can be and can't be, and they're looking at Jesus. Yeah.
Because it's
exactly.
not who they want.
Yeah, it's not who they want. Exactly. That's great.
Riley,
John, Allison,
Allison,
John.
and John.
Oh, I think I said John was here. Sorry.
Oh, did you already do that?
I did. But I think it's wrong.
Okay.
Riley, John, Allison, Caleb.
Allison, and Mia.
Oh, Mia's not
Mia. Hi.
So Riley, John, Allison, Mia.
Okay.
Mirror too. Mirror as well.
They know that. So yeah, very, very good point on that. I'm gonna use an analogy. I went on the Colorado mission trip, and we were going to this place called Heart of Jerusalem, which we went to. We've been to the last two times before that when we went to Colorado Springs, and it's Middle Eastern food, and it's delicious. Best baklava ever. Am I right? See, okay. So, well, my birthday's in February. So I don't know what people were expecting, but they weren't expecting what we had, right? And I thought it was delicious, but there were kids that were like, drive-through McDonald's, right? Because it wasn't what they were expecting, and so they were disappointed in this delicious. I like almost any kind of ethnic food better than American. I don't care what it is; it's better. So that's kind of. I mean, they had these preconceived notions of what Messiah would be, and when Messiah came, they didn't recognize him because it didn't fit their preconceived notions. So they didn't like them. Like him. They didn't want him because of that. Listen, um, this idea of Jesus being who we want him to be, and if he isn't what we want him to be, then we reject him or we get angry or whatever it is not just a first century thing, right? It happens all the time. It is Satan's desire then and now that we would reject Jesus, that we would look at him and go, well, that's not. He didn't do what I wanted him to do. Well, he's not who I thought he was. And that's what was happening with these Jewish leaders in particular. And we have to combat that. We have to combat that thinking that we know exactly who he is. Listen, he is way more. He's way more than anyone. And we have to combat that sort of, he needs to be who I want him to be. He is who he is. And that's God's name, right? I am. Okay, that's it for today on that. But we're going to keep the tape rolling. Open up your student work, and we're going to answer these questions together.
Our past student work or next chapter student work?
What?
Our new student work, right? And the next chapter, or are we doing the old one?
Is it chapter 17?
We did 18.
Yeah, that's
Going
what
to
we're
chapter 18?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like,
We're going over. Okay. I saw your blank page. I was like, what did I do wrong? Okay. I'm supposed to get first. So the first question says, we've been through the passage, so you're good. What would Jesus' brothers want him to show himself? Why? Now it makes sense. Why? We got to get the right word there. 3 letters. It's really important. Why would Jesus' brothers want him to show himself to everyone when even they did not believe in him? Yeah.
I mean, if your brother can do miracles, might as well show them off. And it's like, yeah, that's my brother. Now pay attention to me.
I think that's exactly right. I think they thought
That's what I would do.
Give us some bona fides, right? Yeah.
I think what they wanted, it was probably like in a kind of mocking kind of way too, and probably that as well. But I think like inside they wanted a good reason to believe in him, and they wanted other people to have a good reason to believe in him. They wanted to see that he was the Messiah. Like, I want you to prove yourself. If you keep talking yourself up like this, we want to see it.
Yeah, and Jesus isn't a trick doing. He's not my dog that when I say sit, she sits. She's really good about that, by the way. So I think all of that is true, or at least possibly true. And yeah, how are you gonna act on the big stage, right? On the big stage of Jerusalem. Yeah, all of that. Some of the Jews thought Jesus was a deceiver. What kind of deception were they talking about? What might have they have thought was the lie Jesus was perpetrating? Yeah. Yep, absolutely. What else?
He was leading them towards the real Jesus and not the one that they had made up in their heads. And then he also was talking, even though they were like, "What authority do you have to speak?" Because who's your rabbi? Who did you learn from? And he said, "My father." And so they probably just assumed it was like his actual Father.
Well, and in the mouth of literally anyone else who has ever lived, that would have been preposterous. Okay? You gonna say something? Okay. Yeah, I think all of that is true as well. They may have thought that his miracles weren't real; they were just tricks. They may have thought that he was blaspheming by claiming to be God. They may have thought that he couldn't be Messiah because he was, from Nazareth and not, not of the house of David, maybe, even though he was. And then. What was that? Just one other thing that you guys mentioned that I thought was they might have, just not, they had a lot of preconceived notions, wrong notions about Messiah, and he didn't fit with those. The Jews were surprised at Jesus' knowledge because he had not sat under the teaching of their rabbis. What was the source of Jesus' teaching? Yeah.
He was God, like he already knew everything.
Yeah, exactly. But he said the Father. But yes, it came directly from the Father, and he was God. And so he was definitely had the authority to teach whatever. What does the rabbi's question suggest about where they were looking for their own authority? Yeah.
Physical things, mostly in the law.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever had been handed down through the years by the leaders, by ancestors, and by the law. What does verse 17 teach is the determining factor in allowing us to understand the source of Jesus' authority? Yeah. Those who genuinely obey God, those who not only know God's law or know God's word, but also live by that. If you're, I'm going to use Mrs. Schraub as an example. I'll tell you a little story. So this is like 4 or 5 years ago. A family came and toured, just like all your families did at some point, just like my family did at one point. And I was in a meeting with her and with Mr. Hood, and asked how it went. And she said this: "I went well. They won't come this year. They'll come next year." And they didn't say it. I said, "Oh, did they tell you that?" No. And then the next year they came. And I said to Mr. Hood, I said, "How did she do that?" And Mr. Hood's answer was, "She just walked so close." And I think, it says here, those who genuinely obey God will understand. It is how do you get to know someone? The people who know me the best are the people who have lived with me, right? My husband, my children, my sisters, my roommates in college know way too much. If they ever come, you can't ask them any questions, and I will forbid them from telling any stories. That's who we know best, right? The people we are closest to. And it is as we walk closely with Jesus and walk in obedience to Him, we see Him, and we see Him at work. We see what He's doing. And so that is still true today. What is suggested by the fact that the Jews wanted to seize Jesus? Did they think that he was a lunatic or someone blaspheming by claiming to be God? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. They thought he was violating the law. He was, not keeping the law. He was a blasphemer. He needed to be judged. And at some point, they're going to say he needs to be killed. At some point soon, they're going to say he needs to be killed. So yes, all of that. What does verse 31 show that Jesus' miracles had accomplished in some people's lives? Yeah.
Kind of more people believe that he was actually Christ.
Yeah, it brought people to faith in, so it led them to believe and to be changed because of the question. Okay, let's see. Apple schedule 48. I'll tell you what, let's do it. Do it together.
What should I do?
How's that?
Wait,
Yeah.
I do have a question. Okay, so on the last question, it asked what verse 31 shows Jesus' miracles accomplished in his hearts. But the verse says, yet many of the people believed in him, and they said, when Christ appears, he will do more signs than this man has done.
Yeah, some of it. There was a few.
I was like,
That's good.
you just need to finish
That kind of thing, like so man. There's no way. There's no way.
So much. Next one.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way.
You just can't wait till they come out with a new model. Mrs. Keezer. What should I do with quiz 16 and 17?
I think
16 is turning 7. We did it in class.
Yeah.
And then 17.
I think it's only 17.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Just add your test.
Just
Okay.
okay. According to the curriculum, is that what the first thing that says? Mine looks weird.
It says a gap of approximately, well, it says dark, in the appropriate space to indicate whether each statement is true.
Actually,
okay.
first it's clearly
Okay, a gap approximated 6 months occurred between John 6 and the beginning of John 7. The curriculum says that. So, yeah, if it went from Passover to the Feast of Tabernacles, that would be about right. The Feast of Tabernacles was a 24-hour feast. That is false. 7 days. During the Feast of Tabernacles, people built scale models of the tabernacle with palm branches and offered sacrifices inside them.
seems false.
That is not true.
You guys look at my palm tree house. I'm gonna burn it.
Christ attended the feast openly so that he could get the attention of the people before he told them the water of life. Told them he was the water of life. That's false. I changed that one. Good. The people were amazed that Christ knew letters. That means, and that's not something I taught about. It means he had great knowledge. So the people were amazed that Christ had great knowledge. True or false?
It's kind of
True. They were saying, who did you study under?
They're like,
That you know all this. Yeah. So, so that's true. The people did not believe that Jesus was the promised Messiah because he grew up in what city? Nazareth. No, because they're all Jews. Who got most upset by Christ's claim, I am from him and he has sent me? The Jews, and specifically the Jewish leaders. So when you say, look at me, everybody look up here, the Jews in John almost always means the Jewish leadership. Okay? So you need to be able to differentiate between the people and the Jews. They're all Jews, right? But the Jewish leadership. So make sure you put Jewish
They're all
leadership.
Jews. They're more Jewish than the other Jews.
Then according to John 7:1, why did Jesus withdraw from the public eye during the time just before the Feast of Tabernacles? Yeah, the opposition from the Jewish leadership was growing. and his hour had not yet come, right? It wasn't time for him to get arrested. So he made sure that didn't happen. So the opposition against him was growing among the Jewish leaders.
The book literally says they were becoming more antagonistic.
Now, last one. Explain why Christ delayed his attendance at the Feast of Tabernacles. Yes.
Because he didn't want to go with his family.
Possibly.
Well, I feel like it's more of he didn't want to make a big deal of the fact that he was there and he wanted to come in more of a secretive way. And if he had come with his disciples, they probably would have made him more of a big deal about it. And then, like, made a whole big thing that, like, you weren't here.
Yeah. Yeah, so he didn't want to cause a stir because of the division amongst the people and their leaders concerning him, right? There was disagreement about who he was, and there was growing dissension and growing opposition to Christ. And so he didn't want to make a fuss. He didn't want to go publicly. Does he eventually go to the temple and teach openly? Yes, he does.
He like rides the donkey there.
But he knew everything he did, right, was to do his Father's will. So at the beginning of John 7, when he says, my time is not yet come, he means I'm not, this isn't the time for me to go to the feast. I'll go to the feast in a few days or whatever. But also it is true that his hour had not yet come, his time to be arrested. So he came quietly and he waited. Okay. That is
Oh, goody.
good work.
Do we hear they did?
I will see you. I will see you on Monday. Or at basketball. If you finish this, I'll take your partial credit. So I will text it.